There is a story we repeat so often that it has felt like it is the truth. That in the 1960s, two nations, Kenya and Singapore, stood side by side at history's doorway. Both poor, both newly free, both unsure of what will come next. We are told they started the same race, and for years, that story has made us comfortable. Because if the starting line was equal, then the outcomes feel explainable. But history is really that simple. Because something happened very early, something so quiet that it barely made headlines, yet so powerful that it reshaped everything that followed. Within a single decade, the paths had already separated, not slowly, not gradually, but permanently. Today, one society feels predictable, the other feels fragile. In one place, rules behave like rules. In another, rules behave like suggestions. And yet, both nations came from the same era, the same global moment, the same promises of independence. So, where did the difference begin? It wasn't geography, it wasn't intelligence, it wasn't culture. It was a decision. A decision most people never notice because it happens before prosperity, before skylines, before money. And now, decades later, as Kenya stands before one of the boldest ambitions in its history, a 5 trillion infrastructure fund approved by the cabinet, that forgotten decision matters again. Because the question is not whether Kenya can build, the question is what must exist before building even makes sense. And to understand that, we must first return to the story we think we already know. We begin with a familiar myth. We begin with a story many of us have heard before, a comforting story. This story compares national systems and policy choices. It is not a judgment of people, cultures, or political beliefs. It says that in 1963, when Kenya gained its independence, and in 1965, when Singapore became a small independent city-state, the two nations started from the same place: poor, newly free, and uncertain about the future. It is an attractive idea because if they started equally, then what separates them today must come down to choices, not destiny. But before we go any further, we must pause and look closely at the facts. At independence, Singapore's GDP per person stood at about $500. Kenya was also in that same range. This number is often repeated as proof that the two countries began on equal ground. But this is where the story usually ends and where the misunderstanding begins. Because what happened next was neither slow nor subtle. By 1975, just 10 years later, Singapore's average income was already 5 times higher than Kenya. Not after half a century, not after generations, after a single decade. Today, the difference has grown even wider. Singapore's income per person exceeds 108,000 US dollars. Kenya remains below $4,900. This is not a narrow gap, it is wide. And what does this gap mean in real life? In Singapore, high income is not an abstract statistics. It shapes daily existence, stable jobs, predictable wages, savings that grow instead of evaporating, an economy built not on a single pillar, but on many: finance, trade, advanced manufacturing, technology, and logistics. In Kenya, incomes remain more fragile. Growth exists, but it is uneven. Too many households live one shock away from crisis. This difference did not appear overnight. It emerged from systems that rewarded productivity, planning, and long-term thinking, and punished failure early, before it became permanent. The numbers tells us how wide the gap is. Daily life tells us why it matters. So the truth, uncomfortable as it may be, is this: they were never truly running the same race. They shared similar colonial histories, but from the earliest years of independence, their priorities and systems moved in very different directions. While Kenya celebrated political freedom and national identity, Singapore declared war, not on an external enemy, but on its own weaknesses. A war against corruption, a war against inefficiency, a war against the idea that a difficult past could excuse poor systems. That early decision changed everything that followed. And to understand Kenya's 5 trillion ambition today, we must first understand this divergence. For Singapore, corruption was not treated as a minor offense or an unavoidable reality. It was treated as a threat to survival. Its first Prime Minister, Lee Kuan Yew, spoke of corruption as a disease, one that could destroy a young nation from the inside. To fight it, Singapore empowered the Corrupt Practices Investigation Bureau, known as the CPIB. This institution had wide authority. It investigated the senior ministers and junior clerks alike. No office was too high and no name was protected. Punishment was public, swift, and unmistakable. Careers ended, reputations collapsed. The message was clear. The law applied to everyone. The effects of this discipline became visible far beyond courtrooms. Singapore's cities became clean, orderly, and remarkably safe, not because of cultures alone, but because rules were enforced consistently. Public spaces were respected, waste was managed efficiently, crime remained low, and people felt safe walking late at night. Clean streets were not a target, they were the signal. They told citizens and investors the same thing: rules matter here, and they are applied equally. But Singapore did something else, something just as important. It removed excuses. Civil servants and ministers were paid competitive, world-class salaries, enough to live with dignity, enough to remove the argument that corruption was a response to hardship. This deal was simple: you will be paid well, and if you steal, the consequences will be severe. The cost of corruption became unbearably high. Kenya, too, has fought this battle. Institutions like the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commissions have recovered more than $271 million in stolen assets in recent years. This matters. It shows effort. It shows intent. But the difference lies in how the system responds. In Singapore, corruption is treated like a heart attack, rare, shocking, and often ending a career permanently. In Kenya, it has too often been treated like a long illness, something managed, negotiated, and endured. One system is designed to eliminate the problem, the other, at times, to contain it. These challenges are not unique to Kenya and are faced by many developing nations working to strengthen institutions. Behind every anti-corruption effort stands a civil service. This is the engine room of the state. These are the people who issue licenses, collect taxes, approve projects, manage roads, and keep government running long after elections are over. In Singapore, interacting with government is designed to be fast, digital, and predictable. Licenses are processed quickly, rules are clear, decisions follow procedure, not personal influence. Citizens and businesses know what to expect and when to expect it. This efficiency is not accidental, it is enforced. Low corruption does not only protect public money, it protects time, it protects confidence, it allows people to plan, invest, and work without constantly negotiating the system itself. When government functions smoothly, the economy breathes more easily. Singapore built a system where promotion depended on one thing: measurable performance. Results mattered, competence mattered, failure carried consequences. Today, Singapore ranks among the most efficient public sectors in the world. Kenya's civil service, by international assessment, is more fragile. Political influence and patronage often interfere with professional decision-making. When loyalty outweighs competence, systems slow down, mistakes increases, public trust weakens. This is not a reflection of a Kenyan talent, it is a reflection of a system design. In Singapore, an official knows that failure can end a career. In Kenya, survival too often depends on political alignment. And when systems reward alignment more than performance, progress becomes harder to sustain. Similar challenges exist in many political systems around the world. With a disciplined state in place, Singapore pursued a clear economic blueprint. It did not wait for investors to build infrastructure. It built ports, roads, industrial zones, and housing first, then invited investment. The results are visible everywhere. Singapore's ports move goods with extraordinary speed. Its roads are maintained with precision. Public transport, trains and buses arrive on time with near military reliability. Changi Airport, repeatedly ranked among the world's best, operates as a global nerve center of trade and movement. This infrastructure does more than impress visitors. It saves time, it reduces cost, it increases productivity, it turns discipline into economic advantage. Infrastructure was not built for prestige, it was built to work. Through institutions like the Economic Development Board, Singapore moved deliberately from one industry to the next: textile, electronic, manufacturing, biotechnology, and finance. Always planning ahead, always preparing for the next stage. Kenya's economy also grew, but often driven by consumption and services. Over time, a weakness emerged. The country began consuming more than it produced. Imports grew faster than exports. Spending grew faster than industrial output. Planning became reactive, often shaped by political cycles rather than long-term strategy. Yet Kenya holds a powerful advantage that Singapore never had. As of 2022, more than 86% of Kenya's electricity comes from renewable sources: geothermal, hydro, and wind. In a world racing towards clean energy, this is a strategic gift. Singapore had to invent every advantage. Kenya was born with one. The question is whether the systems exist to use it fully. This brings us to the present. In late 2025, Kenya's cabinet approved, as announced publicly, a proposal for a Kenya shillings 5 trillion national infrastructure fund, roughly $35 billion US dollars. The aim is ambitious: ports, roads, energy grids, industrial parks. The inspiration to this initiative is clear: Singapore's Temasek holding, the state investment fund that helped turn a small city-state into a global hub. On paper, the idea is bold and attractive, but history offers us a warning. Temasek was not the beginning of Singapore's success, it was the reward. It was created in 1974, after years of strict law enforcement, after corruption had been confronted, after institutions had earned trust. Temasek was built on existing state assets and operated within a system investors believed in. Kenya's fund, for now, is an ambition. Its success depends on credibility. Trust comes from investors, citizens, and market. This is the paradox. Kenya wants a Singapore-style fund, but such a fund requires a Singapore-style foundation. So the question becomes unavoidable. Does the fund create trust, or must trust come first? To be fair, Singapore's birth came with trade-offs. Different societies balance order and freedom differently, shaped by history, culture, and circumstances. No single model fits all nations. Order was prioritized. Public space is carefully managed. Political expression is regulated. Protests are tightly controlled. Singapore ranks among the world's freest economies, but much lower in political freedoms. Kenya chose a different path: a vibrant, energetic, sometimes unpredictable democracy, a free press, competitive politics, open public debate. These are freedoms many societies value deeply. So the question is not whether Kenya should become Singapore. That is the wrong question. The real question is this: within a democratic system, which Singaporean principle can Kenya realistically adopt? Merit over patronage, rule of law applied equally, long-term planning beyond election cycles. Perhaps the clearest proof of system strength appears where politics is least visible. In classrooms, where Singapore students consistently rank among the world's best in mathematics, science, and technology. In hospitals, where modern, efficient healthcare supports long life expectancy and low infant mortality. These are not luxury outcomes, they are foundations. Education produces skill, healthcare preserves productivity, Together, they sustain growth across generations, long after leaders leave office. Development is not magic, it is not luck, it is the result of choices repeated consistently over time. Kenya now stands at its own defining moment, not with $500 per person, but with a $35 billion vision. With renewable energy advantage, with institutions showing signs of effort, the infrastructure fund is not the real test. The test is what happens before the first dollar is spent. Are systems strengthened? Is trust built? Is discipline enforced? Singapore's lesson is simple. Discipline comes first. Trust follows. Capital follows. The question facing Kenya is whether it is ready to take the first step and the opportunity that comes with it.